The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this June 28th, 2024, an election year. Oh my God. I mean, I didn't expect much of last night's debate. I thought it would be really, really bad. I was dreading having to watch it, decided to watch it anyway, so I would have something to say today about it. And, Trump is Trump, so I expected the worst of Trump. And of course, Biden has been in steady deterioration. He can barely walk. He seems completely unconnected. So I expected him to be bad yesterday, and indeed expected that this would go badly for him, but not that bad. Oh my God. I mean, Biden really looked completely senile. He had no energy. He couldn't lift his feet off the ground. He had no voice. He couldn't keep track of his own thoughts. And we're not talking about complex thoughts. We're talking about pretty straightforward, simple sentences. Couldn't keep track. The first answer was it. He was dead. Once he answered the first question, he was absolutely dead. He was finished. I mean, and he cannot win the election. I mean, it's over for him. What did he say? Something about killing Medicare? Rambling. But it wasn't just the fact that he was rambling. Part of the time I looked at my wife and, what did he say? Could you decipher what he just said? Blah, 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 just mumbling. And he mumbles when the sentence doesn't come together, and you mumble as if nobody can hear you. But it was just a pathetic performance. It's the worst debate performance. I believe it. I haven't seen a debate in American history, but certainly it seems like the worst debate performance in American history. He was not there. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for the old man. Not really, of course, because he put himself in this position, and his aides put him in this position, and his wife put him in this position. And then what's amazing is I don't think he's even conscious of how badly it went, because I just saw video of him today in North Carolina in front of thousands of people. I don't know who the hell is coming out to cheer him on. Full of energy, yelling at the crowd, complete sentences, completely coherent, bizarre, completely bizarre. It's like he went off his meds last night, and this morning they put him back on the meds, or he has, I think a lot of people in mental decline have these ups and downs. I know a bunch of people, you'll talk to them, and they're completely not there. They have no clue really what's going on. And then a few hours later, you'll talk to them, and they seem completely normal. Completely normal. And it's like the debate happened in one of those zones where Biden was completely out. And, you just can't have this in a president. Now, if we go back to integrity of political leaders, which there is none of, obviously, if he had any kind of integrity, he would resign, or he would at least step down from the nomination. If his wife cared at all about the country or him or anything, she would urge him, supposedly she's the only one who he will listen to, urge him to step down. Supposedly, Obama's meeting with him later today, and supposedly Obama's going to urge him to step down. It's just unfathomable that this guy, that anybody would still consider this guy viable. There was a poll, I just saw a poll, who won the debate last night, and 33% of Americans think he won. I mean, I despise Trump. I mean, we'll get to Trump in a minute. I despise Trump, but Trump walked all over him. Not because Trump did anything good, although he did do one thing good, but because Biden was just so horrible, so unbelievably terrible. So, I mean, you saw him on camera. I mean, he had this vacant look, completely expressionless. Again, I'm looking at video of him in North Carolina right now. He's smiling. He didn't showing all his white teeth. None of that yesterday. None of that yesterday. So I don't know. Again, I assume it's got to do with meds or the time of day. Maybe he fades in the evening. I do not know. But somebody on that team screwed up royally in terms of letting him go on stage and let him go in that condition on stage. It can't be a cold because he showed up. Again, North Carolina, he still got a cold, I assume, unless it's all passed. Anyway, this is, so we've got, so here's the situation you face as an American. All of us face. We have somebody who's clearly in mental decline, clearly not there, not capable, certainly not on a consistent basis. And of course, again, the Wall Street Journal ran an extensive story about this a few weeks ago. We talked about it on the show, on how he's completely gone, how Kevin McCarthy and other people who went to meet him and talked to the difference between this Joe Biden and Joe Biden as vice president and everything else. And Democrats came out and said, no, that's not true. It's a lie. He's completely functional. Well, the truth was revealed yesterday, completely, unequivocally. You could see it already, in the video out of D-Day and other video that was circulating, how pathetic he was. But here's the challenge. You've got a guy who's 81 years old who is not here. He's clearly fading fast. And the alternative to him is a megalomaniac, narcissistic, principled liar. That's a combination. Not really. I mean, a principled pragmatist. There you go. You can't be a principled pragmatist either. A devoted pragmatist, a devoted liar, who has no respect, zero, zilch, nada respect for the American system of government and for respect for separation of powers and respect for the system of government we have, and who could really cause constitutional crises in the future. He's worse than what I just described. I was being generous, right? So you've got a real moron. I mean, a real idiot, and somebody who, granted, never that smart, but has lost whatever he has. I don't know. I mean, the only, the challenge is if I could believe that Biden would surround himself with half-decent people, then I think the choice would be easy. You can't vote for Trump. I still think you cannot vote for Trump. But you can't vote for Trump. Trump is just anti-American, too anti-American to be able to vote for Trump. But I don't think you can vote for Biden, not for president of the United States, not for dog catcher at this point. I don't know. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And look, we deserve it. I mean, this is the consequence of a mixed economy. This is a consequence of concentrating so much power in the presidency. But this is also a consequence of this being a that the presidency, because of the power it has become so corrupt. It's a consequence of the fact that the better people in our culture do not want to be in politics, do not want to come anywhere close to politics. And of course, it's a real consequence of the fact that the Republican Party could not turn its back on Trump and embraced him and renominated him. So we really are stuck with no choices. So, God, we have the most awful selection we've ever had in this country in terms of candidates, and we have a man who wouldn't recognize the truth if it slapped him in the face, and we have a man who's just not conscious enough to recognize the truth. Two of, again, the worst candidates we've ever seen. But at this point, it doesn't matter because Trump has won, right? So Trump will be the next president unless the Democrats somehow figure out how to drop Biden from the ticket. Betting markets now have the probability that Biden is dropped at 40%. Now, I think that's too high. I don't think Biden's going to leave. By every account, his wife wants him to continue, and I think that's all that matters. And it's not obvious who they replace him with. They're talking about, what's her name, the woman who's the governor of Michigan. They're talking about the governor of California. The one name that never comes up is the Vice President Harris, which tells you everything you need to know, again, about how corrupt the Democratic Party is. That they're all behind a vice presidential candidate who might become president, who none of them believe should become president. So you've got Whitman and you've got Newsom, and they've mentioned a couple of others that they might nominate, but Kamala's name has not come up. Supposedly, in back rooms, she's pretty pissed off about that. You can imagine. Here she is sitting vice president of the United States, and the president of the United States is incapacitated, and nobody thinks she should become president. That is pretty amazing. It tells you, again, all you have to know about the modern Democratic Party. It's become, just like the Republican Party, tribal, authoritarian. Nobody will question the decisions of whatever cabal made this happen. I hope that they get rid of Biden for the sake of, for the sake of this country and because, the one thing that would really, really destroy this country is if Trump won in a landslide, instead of losing in a landslide, which is what I was hoping. He would win in a landslide and take with him victory in the House and Senate. And, I don't know what happens to this country if that happens. So it needs to be at least a competitive race. And for that, the Democrats need urgently to get rid of Biden. They need to find a way to fire him, replace him. I mean, maybe they need help from Trump. Trump could come in and say, "You're fired." That would be good. And they need to replace him. They need to get rid of him, and they need to put somebody young on there. I mean, imagine somebody young and a little combative up there against Trump. Trump comes on there. He repeats the same lines he's always said, so he's completely predictable. So you should have a bunch of canned answers to every claim that he makes because you know exactly what he's going to say. And imagine somebody combative actually going after Trump. Now, Trump was excellent yesterday, partially because he wasn't triggered, right? He got triggered later on in the debate, but he basically played by the rules. He didn't speak over, even though the mics were muted, but he didn't even try. He gave succinct answers. He didn't try to go over. He he just hung in there because he knew, I think, he knew that all he had to do to win was to let Biden talk. And indeed, the less Trump talked, the more likely it was that he would win. So I think he played it really, really smart. He played it, and by smart, I mean by basically letting Biden destroy himself, by letting Biden self-destruct. And it was beautifully played. I mean, that's how it needs to be done. If the Democrats wanted any chance, they needed to put up somebody who was younger and combative and quick, so that you could answer every one of Trump's lies, and every sentence of his he lies. So you'd have to keep track of them all. But I think somebody quick on their feet could have taken Trump apart completely. Trump is, and the thing that happens with Trump is if you go after him, that is, if you challenge him, if you question it, if you counter his stuff with actual truth, with facts, he loses it. And he goes ballistic, and he goes nuts, and then he looks like the crazy Trump on stage. Yesterday, he could come across as the cool, collected Trump. Nothing rattles him. He's up there confident. Why? Because he wasn't challenged. No challenges. I mean, he played nice with the, he did a good job. He played nice with the what do you call it? The CNN folks who asked the questions. He played his part perfectly, just basically sitting in the background and letting Biden just collapse. And that's exactly what happened. Anonymous user, thank you for the sticker. Ryan, thank you for the sticker as well. And of course, Applejack, $50. Really appreciate the support. Thank you, Applejack. So Trump did what he needed to do, which is basically get out of the way of Biden. Out of the way of the train wreck that was Biden. Trump did what he needed to do in the sense of going after and repeating, the same lies that have worked for him with the American people for 8 years. So he did that very well. Blame everything on illegal immigrants. That's always effective. Just give you one little example of the you could do this for every sentence that he said. He kept blaming illegal immigrants for bankrupting Social Security and Medicare, for the shortfalls in Social Security and Medicare. But pretty much everybody who's looked at this, including anti-immigration groups, come to the obvious, because it's simple math, obvious conclusion that illegal immigrants actually help Social Security and Medicare because they bring in taxes, FICA and Medicare taxes, they bring into the system. But because they're illegally in the United States, they don't withdraw anything. So the FICA taxes, which is Social Security and Medicare, are automatically withdrawn from their account because they're working, maybe under false papers or whatever. It's withdrawn from their account, goes into the fund, but then it's never paid to them because they never claim it. So indeed, Social Security and Medicare are helped by illegal immigrants. Again, just a mathematical fact. But you can find, what is it, CIS, what does CIS stand for? The Center for Immigration Studies, which is generally an anti-immigration place. They have a nice paper that shows this pretty clearly. But Trump can say that, and Americans go, yeah, those evil illegal immigrants. But they're not taking jobs. They actually increase the number of jobs. So, unemployment is super low. Labor participation rates are relatively high. As illegal immigration skyrocketed under Biden, unemployment went down, job creation increased. There's unfilled job positions all over the place. There's zero evidence, literally zero evidence. There's lots of evidence to the contrary that illegal immigrants take Americans' jobs. It just is not true. It just doesn't happen. So there's just nothing to these. He just lies, right? It's the same with the tariffs. He did the same thing with the tariffs yesterday. He went into the whole spiel about the Chinese paid the tariffs, which is stupid on so many fronts, and just plain economically ignorant on so many fronts, and just plain wrong on so many fronts. Right? So, yeah, I mean, you could argue that illegal immigrants are costly to education and maybe local welfare programs, all kinds of stuff. Sure, you can argue that, and you would have to look at the actual numbers, but the reality is the Social Security, Medicare, it's exact opposite. And the reality is that illegal immigration does not reduce the number of jobs in America. It just doesn't. And you can huff and puff and get angry and mad, but it doesn't change the actual facts of reality with regard to immigration. You could argue against immigration. There are lots of arguments you can make against immigration. There is no valid economic argument against immigration other than welfare. So you could argue about culture. You can argue about what do you call it? I guess you can argue about crime, but crime, again, there's no evidence. There's just no argument other than the cultural. They'll vote for the left argument against immigrants. And if the issue was illegal immigration because they get welfare, then just don't allow welfare for illegal immigrants. I mean, that seems to be a simple solution. Don't allow welfare for anybody, but don't allow welfare for illegal immigrants. Seems to be a simple solution. But that's, of course, not the issue. It never has been the issue. So, yeah, I mean, again, there is no economic argument against immigration, legal or illegal. And it doesn't really matter if you're legal or illegal from an economic perspective. It might be other law enforcement, respect for the law, rule of law, I don't know, whatever. But, yeah, you know, some people don't care about statistics. They just go by their gut feeling because, you know, their gut feeling is better than data. To hell with data. They don't trust the data, so they just go by what feels right. What they sense, what the anecdotal evidence they have. That's good enough. Yeah, why make an effort? And these are all people who have very strong opinions, but they don't go by the data, even though they have strong opinions, because the data is corrupt by the establishment, by the mainstream media, by whoever, right? So screw the data. I'm going to have my opinions in spite of that. Based on? I mean, you'd think you'd have a little bit of, I don't know, you know, a little bit of thinking about, okay, if I don't trust the data, then how do I know what's going on? And do I want to have strong positions about these things? But no, that would require actual thinking and actual introspection. We don't want that. Gail asked a question that's kind of funny because of what I saw earlier. Will altruism kick into voters who pity Biden? And she said, just kidding. Well, I saw an objection to judging Biden's performance last night. You know, you really shouldn't judge Biden's performance last night. It's not nice. It's really ableism. This is ableism, and it's discrimination based on people's ability. And you really shouldn't do that. You shouldn't discriminate against somebody's ability. And, you know, Biden's trying. He's making a good effort. And aren't we supposed to grade people on effort? Yeah, no, he's not all there. And now, you know, this is ableism, discriminating against people who are not all there, discriminating against people who don't have abilities, right? It's also ageism, you know, the fact that he's old. He's trying hard. I mean, really, discrimination is bad. Don't discriminate. I mean, it's just unbelievable, you know, the kind of nonsense that people will come up with, unfortunately, on both sides of all these issues. But yes, altruism is never, Gail, never far away. So even though we laugh at how ridiculous all that is, there it is. It's right there. Altruism is right there. Ableism, ageism, whatever ism you want to call it, whatever you know, what do you call it? Whatever the latest ideological BS is, it's all driven by altruism. And the only reason he made it onto the stage, the only reason anybody considers him is well, two reasons. One is altruism, and the other is Trump. Right. So that is the state of American politics. I will maybe later on the show, we'll talk about how do we get out of this mess. Maybe some positive words about how to move in a direction that is less absurd and ridiculous, and move in a more positive direction. But it's difficult. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult to get out of this because you've just guaranteed another 4 years of Trump, and I don't know where that leaves America. Another 4 years of Trump. I really don't know. A lot of it will depend on who he picks to be around him. A lot of that depends on what places like the Heritage Foundation are doing right now and the kind of people they are bringing forward, and whether those are really the people who are going to be guiding policy. It is going to be really, really interesting. I think we barely survived the first 4 years of Trump. The next 4 years are going to be more difficult because you've got at least two made significant wars out there that whoever is president is going to have to deal with, and that falls a lot on the presidency. And then if you do get Congress that's dominated by Republicans because nobody's going to come out to vote for Biden, then you've got to worry about a lot of other issues. You know, what did I hear yesterday? Oklahoma? Was it Oklahoma? Arkansas? I think Oklahoma came out and said, Tennessee is requiring they have the 10 Commandments in every classroom. We're going to up on that. We're going to demand that there is a copy of, not just the 10 Commandments on the wall in every classroom. We're going to demand that every classroom have a Bible on hand. And we're going to demand that at every grade, students actually have a Bible class as part of their education, so that the Bible becomes part of the educational curriculum of schools in Oklahoma. I mean, who's going to stand up opposing that? Certainly not Trump. Congress, maybe the Supreme Court, hard to tell. I have a feeling even the Supreme Court will find that objectionable. But I don't know. It is very, 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 very hard to predict what this Supreme Court will decide. I mean, some of the decisions coming down today, not so much in the direction. I think all of them were expected. But the combination of who voted for what, really, at least one of them is interesting. The other two are predictable. We saw that before. All right, what else about the debate? Any questions about that? Let's look at the questions about the debate. Andrew says, Biden losing his mental faculties reminds me of The Sopranos. Many characters who lose their mental faculties because of psychological damage due to their evil actions. Do you think that is a parallel to modern politicians? I mean, that would be tough. I mean, if that were the case, then Trump would also have to be almost as senile as Biden. And who knows, by the time he's 81, maybe he will be. But I know a lot of people who have mental problems and have at 81 who are not politicians, who have nothing to do with it. So let's not overly do this. There's no question that living a not good life, living a life of evasion and immorality has psychological impact on you. But dementia in all its various forms, I don't know how correlated it is with that. I mean, does that mean that I'm never going to have dementia because I don't engage in evasion? I wish that were true. Luckily for me, I really don't have any of the genetic predispositions for dementia, but I just don't want to. I worry about that. Right? There's a real biological cause, and we don't want to inflict it. I think you can say that politicians are miserable generally. Trump is definitely miserable. All you have to do is watch him. You can see how miserable and pathetic of a human being he is. So morality has a price you pay, but does the price that gets paid, is it reflected in your, in your psychology, or is it reflected in the physiology of literally, mental acuity, which I think is to a large extent physiological. So really, really hard to tell, and I'm not, given that I'm not a expert on this, I cannot say. Okay, I'm going to take a 1-minute break. Hello? Yeah, I can't talk right now. Can you call me after 4 o'clock? All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. There was a phone call I had to answer and tell them to call back later. All right, so Andrew, that is Andrew. Jake says, hey, Yaron, I'm pressure washing today on the ground. Thank you. Good. I worry about Jake listening to the Yaron Brook show while he's window washing. I don't know on what floor. He doesn't tell us on what floor. I think he doesn't want me to worry, but today is on the ground, so we're good. All right, quickly. Michael says, Trump was clearly advised not to bully him and let him have a few senior moments for a highlight reel. Absolutely. Trump campaign has already put out the highlight reel, so the highlight reel is out there. You can watch it. And he definitely was well coached in terms of how to, how to not seem crazy, not seem mean. I think he had one. I mean, he right off the bat, he could have launched at Biden because of that. I'm killing Medicare. But later in the debate, he says, he said he had a good line. He said, I don't know what Joe Biden just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. Something like that, which was quite effective. So he was coached not to be mean. He didn't even make that many faces and shake his head that much and rolled his eyes that much in the early part of the debate. He started doing more of that later in the debate, right? He started doing that more in the debate, later in the debate. All right. Scott, can you believe some people hated Trump so much they let themselves believe Biden was a viable candidate? Is that mainly the media's fault? No, I think it's a completely, a rational response to how bad Trump is to be as hopeful as you can be to Biden. Now, I do think that there are people in the administration who knew exactly how bad Biden is. There are people within the Democratic Party and within the Democratic, universe who knew exactly the state of Biden's mind. And the fact that they would do it, the fact that they would, keep trying to fool the American people about this is just horrific and dismaying. I think a lot of people thought that Biden was in decline and figured better somebody with mental decline than somebody who might refuse to do what the Supreme Court says, might refuse to vacate after 2 terms, might refuse to accept that he lost in an election. Oh, wait a minute, he already did that. But this time with the vice president who will back him up and maybe a Congress that'll back him up. I think a lot of Americans are really, really fearful for our system of government with Trump in power. And I think legitimately so. And I think their wishful thinking, led them maybe to ignore just how horrible and how bad Biden's condition was. And now they're in a real quagmire because, again, it's very difficult to vote for Trump. It's very difficult to vote for Trump because of all those reasons, that he is antagonistic to our system of government and has shown in the post-2020 elections that he is quite willing to attempt to subvert it. The number one argument against Trump, there were lots of arguments against Trump, but the number one argument against Trump is his willingness to subvert the American system of government. And that he has now coalesced a large group of people around him willing to subvert it. So, and notice I did not use the word democracy because I don't think America, even today, is a democracy yet, although we're approaching that fast. The left has not shown any inclinations to doing that. That's the reality. Maybe they would, but we haven't seen anybody on the left try to subvert an election the way Trump did. We've never seen a president, left or right, who has sent his vice president clearly to do something unconstitutional in order to try to hold on to power. We have never seen any president try to replace slates of delegates to the convention in an attempt to reverse an election. We've never seen a president urge a sitting lieutenant governor to try to find him the votes in order to reverse an election in particular states. We've just never seen this kind of behavior. I'm not saying it's not possible. There's certainly authoritarian tendencies on the left. There are certainly people in the Democratic Party who might try this, particularly now that Trump is got away with it. I mean, this is the thing, the precedent of somebody doing what Trump did after the elections in 2020 and getting away with it and getting reelected leaves it open not just for Trump to do it again, but for Democrats or Republicans in the future to do it. It is one big lurch forward towards authoritarianism, towards a dictator. It's an acceleration of a trend that we were on anyway towards dictatorship. So to reward Trump for that, to give him a pat on the back, to give him a second term, given that, is just, I think, unthinkable, except that the Democrats have put up somebody who just doesn't have the mental acuity to be president, and therefore Americans are going to vote him down. So, I used to think that the only guy Biden, God, I'm having my moment, right? I used to think that the only guy who could lose to Biden was Trump. But the reality is that Biden would lose to anybody right now because of the state he's in. And look, let's step back a minute. This is all a consequence of the state of our nation. This is a consequence of the state of the American political debate. This is a consequence of what the American people want and who they've chosen. The Democratic Party had an opportunity in 2020 and now to choose somebody else other than Biden. They've stuck with Biden. The Republican Party had an opportunity to choose somebody else other than Trump. They stuck with Trump. The American people, while humming and hawing, saying we'd prefer a different choice, have not really made their voices heard. The American people they're quite willing to buy Biden's lies, Trump's lies. They're quite happy with the current, I guess, political parties. They seem quite happy with what Congress is doing. They seem quite happy. I mean, they're unhappy with inflation, but they have no idea what inflation is and what causes it and where it comes from. And, so this is a direct consequence of the state of American politics. We're getting the bottom of the barrel because there's nothing else really. And because this is how we constructed the barrel, this is how we constructed the system. And this is who is choosing to run for these jobs. And the American people are choosing these people because there's no thinking. We're in a state of complete tribalism. As I talked about in my talk at Ocon this summer, there's a complete loss of trust in any kind of expertise, any kind of fact checking. There's a complete disrespect for reality among the electorate. And on top of that, there is a fear. We live in a world dominated by fear. We live in a world dominated by mindlessness, by a lack of reasoning, by a lack of thinking. And if you live in a world like that, right, where fear and anger and tribalism dominate, well, these are the kind of candidates you expect before the fall. This is not the fall. This is not the bottom. This is still far from the bottom, guys. Because the bottom is a young, charismatic, well-spoken, sharp, smart, authoritarian thug. That's the bottom. And that's where we're heading. If something dramatic doesn't happen, that's where we're heading. It doesn't matter who wins this election. That's where we're heading. Because that's ultimately the only thing that will appease and will satisfy the anger and the fear. The population is angry and fearful. And anger and fear do not lead to reason. They do not lead to reasoned debates. They do not lead to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They do not lead to a free society. They lead directly, unequivocally to authoritarianism. And that is where this country's heading. And yesterday's debate, more than anything else, shows us. I mean, what are the American people going to do? They're going to say, I mean, we can't have these incompetents run things. We need somebody who knows what they're doing. We need somebody smart, sharp, who knows what he's doing. That's the way you get a Mussolini. You know, people think that Mussolini, because the way he's portrayed in movies and stuff, was this bumbling fool, kind of idiotic weakling, but he wasn't. Mussolini was an incredibly smart operator. He was considered brilliant at the time. He was a good writer. He was a brilliant speaker. And he rallied the Italian people. He got a majority of them behind him. He was a former socialist who'd become a fascist. Of course, there's not much difference between the two. And he took the frustration of the Italian people with the existing political order. He took the frustration of the Italian people, the elites, the frustration of the Italian people with the fact that they were not progressing, not advancing, not improving, that they were stuck in a rut, that the political system did not seem functional as a republic, which is what Italy was. And he basically, and that the leaders were pathetic and the leaders were impotent, the leaders were not getting anything done. And he basically said, don't worry, I can get things done. Trump is not the authoritarian leader I fear. I've always told you that. Trump is not smart enough. He's not articulate enough. And he's not integrated enough. He has no agenda. To be a true authoritarian, you have to be a uniter and you have to be an integrator. So what you need is somebody much smarter than Trump. So I'm not afraid of Trump becoming a dictator. That's not the issue. It never was. I'm afraid of Trump setting the stage for the dictator. I think he already has. I'm afraid of Trump bringing out the authoritarian tendencies that exist, it appears, today in American society. Yeah, I mean, Paul says, is it Josh Hawley? It might be. I mean, he's going to have to figure out how to unite. He's going to have to figure out how to use his charisma and how to use his ideas to unite. It could be J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance might be better than Josh Hawley at this because J.D. Vance comes from a working class background. He can talk about unions. He's co-authored a number of economic bills with Elizabeth Warren. He is of the left. And what you need is a unifier. Somebody who is an alt-right, kind of fascist with a socialist economic program, what the fascists always have, but who can unify them, who can say, I come from that background. I know what the working class needs. I know what the poor want. And can unify people around that. He's also J.D. Vance and both J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley are both off the charts smart, right? They're much smarter than Trump. So they're both much more articulate. So yes, I think the combination of religion and socialism, both of them, particularly against Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is really religious and very learned, right? He knows his theology. I don't know about J.D. Vance. He's obviously plays up the religion quite a bit, but I don't know how real it is for him and I don't know what his theology is. And then, of course, you've got to wrap it up with environmentalism, and I think either one of those can do it. God left the earth for us to take care of it, and they can figure out a way around that. So, yeah, those are the people I really fear, and I've told you this since 2016. Trump is the transition. Trump is the transitional character. And at this point, Trump is going to be president, so that's what we have. Michael says, both candidates think knowledge is acquired by consensual authority and not observational reality. Yes, I think that's... I think Trump is the most primacy of consciousness you will see in a presidential candidate, I think. He doesn't know what reality is, or he doesn't care about it. All he knows is what he wants, what's in his head, and he believes he makes reality by thinking stuff. So his knowledge doesn't come from a consensus of authority. It comes from his own mind, from whatever he decides it's going to be. Let's see. Mary Arlene says, I was disgusted when Trump said that we need a president who Putin respects. Yes, but that's exactly Trump, right? He gets along with Putin. And, one of the consequences of Trump victory is that Ukraine is going to have to give up a chunk of Ukraine. Trump will basically arm twist Ukraine into giving in maybe not everything Putin wants, but forget about Crimea. That is already that is permanently Russia. But Donetsk, probably those eastern regions around Donetsk city, that will all be handed over to Putin. Maybe even the southern region. That one is hard to tell, and I think Trump will just twist the hand of the Ukrainians, and when the Europeans object, Trump will threaten to leave NATO, and the Europeans will have to succumb. So Trump is a disaster for the Ukrainians, but again, he is going to be president. So they've got a few months here to make a dent in what Russia. The timing of all this is terrible for the Ukrainians. But they've got a few months here to make some kind of dent in to take some territory from Russia so that they have some negotiating power. But Trump is an appeaser. He's a deal maker. That's what it means to him to be a deal maker. It means, and that's what it means to gain Putin's respect. It's to cut deals, and cutting deals is appeasing. You cannot cut a deal with a authoritarian thug like Putin without appeasing him. And you know, Trump has basically sanctioned all the authoritarians in the world. Putin, Xi, the brutal dictator, murderous brutal dictator of North Korea. Trump is their buddy. Trump is their buddy. He said so. He says how well he gets along with all of them, you know, nobody fears him. They all are bewildered by him because, I mean, they're like dramatically smarter than Trump, and they don't get his randomness and stupidity, I guess, and anti-Americanism. I think literally Xi and Putin are like, can you believe this guy? And they run circles around him. They run circles around him. And again, in foreign policy in particular, last time he had really smart people around him. This time he will have no smart people around him. So this time, oh my God, will they run circles around him. But that's the next president of the United States. That's it. Michael Sanders says, serious mental decline versus outright lying. Yep. Yep. David says, how do you think Trump would deal with the latest Israeli-Palestinian situation? That one is hard to tell. I think he will, hard to tell. You know, last night his best line in the whole night was, let Israel finish with it. But then what? What will be his solution for Gaza? What's he actually going to do? I mean, by the time he comes in as president, which will be January, Gaza will be completely destroyed. Hamas will probably be destroyed. I don't know if war in Lebanon will have been engaged in or would have been finalized. I think his tendency will be to try to cut a deal with Lebanon. Again, I don't know if he can. I don't know who the negotiating parties would be, but he'd like to. Again, Trump's tendency is, let's make a deal. Let's cut a deal. Let's go in and cut a deal. I don't know what he would do with Gaza once Israel's finished with it. I mean, if he had good diplomats around him, then they would go and they would arrange a Arab kind of peacekeeping force to place in Gaza, and then he would arrange for the Arab countries to spend a lot of money in rebuilding Gaza. But, which I think is what he tried to do. I think the consequence of that would also be a lot of American money. In spite of the fact that he claims he doesn't want to spend any money, I think that would also involve quite a bit of American money. But, who knows what he would do? That's part of the issue with Trump. You have no idea. I have no idea. Depends who's surrounding him, who is foreign policy associates, both State Department and then defense, and who his security advisor is, who are his main aides, main advisors. We know it won't be the kind of generals and is he going to bring Flynn back? I mean, Flynn was a little crazy back then. He's completely bonkers today. I mean, God help us if Flynn is anywhere near this administration. You're not going to get Mathis. You're not going to get any of those kind of people. So I don't know who it is. It's people coming out of Heritage, but I don't know who Heritage has lined up in terms of this. And again, what do the Saudis want? Trump will do what the Saudis want. So here's my answer to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Trump will do what the Saudis want. So he won't have Kushner there, and Kushner is I think was the pro-Israel force in the administration. He's not joining the administration. And I think what he will do, what Trump will do, is he will go to Saudi Arabia. Last time he danced with the princes. He'll dance with them again. And he'll sit down and say, okay, how do you want to handle Gaza? And he'll let Saudi Arabia lead. And it's nothing about American interests. It's what the Saudis would want. Tom Kozai, FDR is no longer the second worst president intellectually. What a fall in debate since Abe Lincoln. No kidding. Abe Lincoln, long debates. Lincoln-Douglas debates would last over 3 hours. What a world. What a world. Matt, Joe Biden looked like a formaldehyde-covered corpse that was pulled straight out of an open casket funeral. Is this the darkest period in U.S. history? No, I mean, it's the darkest period in maybe American politics in terms of the choice we have. That, yes, it's definitely the worst choice we've ever had, the darkest period in that sense. All right, let's see. Matt, YouTube wouldn't allow that SC with Biden spelled right. That super chat with Biden spelled right. That's interesting. God. My opinion of Nigel Farage. I've already stated my opinion of Nigel Farage. I mean, he's got some good stuff. He's got some bad stuff. I don't trust him. I don't particularly like him. He comes across as a swami politician who is very manipulative. His relatively positive views of Putin are really bad, really, really bad. The fact is Brexit has been a disaster for the UK. And is he really a free trader? I don't know. High Story says Farage is a professional BS talker, but I don't know who High Story is. I'm not sure. I mean, people in the UK, I assume, have looked more carefully into all of this. All right, Andrew says, Republicanism today saved the welfare state by mass deportation. Yeah, I mean, that's Republicans, right? And it was interesting. The whole debate yesterday was about the welfare, about who would give more handouts to whom, right? It was all about the welfare state. There was no discussion of markets, freedom, liberty, free speech, capitalism, nothing. It was all about who can save the poor, who can save blacks, who can save Social Security, Medicare. There was no discussion, any real discussion about the debt. I mean, Trump lied unbelievably about the debt. The debt was, government spending increased more under Trump than under Biden. Trump lied, as he has lied for the last 8 years, about the economy under Trump. Trump lied, again, pretty much everything coming out of Trump's mouth is a lie. But there was nothing to hang your hat on if you were pro-liberty, pro-founding fathers kind of American. There was just nothing in that debate yesterday that suggested anything like that. The questions weren't aligned with that. They were all about the welfare state. But their answers never came close to aligning with American values. There's just no American values represented in the debate. Nothing. Let's see. Kim says, thoughts on a Gavin Newsom presidency. God, I don't think Gavin Newsom is going to be president anytime soon. I think it would be pretty, I think it would be bad. Would it be worse than Biden? Probably not. Would it be worse than Trump? It depends how you categorize. Again, I think Trump's main evil is his disrespect for the American system of government. I don't think Newsom has that kind of authoritarian tendency. I think Newsom would probably govern as a middle-of-the-road Democrat, and that is bad, but not the worst outcome I can think of. David, someone had a question on your thoughts on Gavin Newsom as the Democratic presidential candidate. Would also love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I mean, thanks, David. I just answered that. But yeah, look, Gavin Newsom has done a terrible job in California, but he is a good debater. He looks presidential. He's young. He's articulate. I think he did quite well in the debate against DeSantis, or at least He didn't lose. I mean, I don't know that he won, but he didn't lose. He would, I think he would stand up to Trump. I think he would do a good job in a debate against Trump. But he is the governor of California, and he's done a very, very bad job in California. And he would bring that same very, very bad job to the United States. I've always said this, my preference is for a Democratic president and a Republican House and Senate. That would prevent the Democrat from doing the really horrific, awful things, except when the Republicans join him in doing the really horrible, horrific things, as Republicans joined the Biden administration in doing a few of those. But, for example, Gavin Newsom would be big on climate change, but a lot of the stuff forcing, for example, us to go electric wouldn't pass Congress if Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. So, again, as I've said, since World War II, the best combination for freedom has been a Democratic president and a Republican House or Senate. Again, I'm a numbers guy. I go by the facts. That has been the best in terms of restraining government spending, which is the best proxy for government intervention in the economy. So the worst combination is Democratic everything. Second worst combination is Republican everything. The third worst combination is a Republican president and a Democratic House and Senate, because the Republican always caves. And the best combination, if government spending is your criteria, and it is for me, a Democratic president, a Republican House and Senate. That's what the numbers tell you. You can go check them for yourself. So, yeah, gridlock. I'm all for gridlock. I'm for getting nothing done. Nothing done. Right? So I want a system of government that gets nothing done, because nothing good can happen. Let's see. Andrew says, what inference do you make about Trump's philosophy from his guaranteeing to settle the Ukraine war between winning and taking office? Well, I mean, he's delusional, but he's delusional about that. I don't think he's capable of doing that. Although, he might be able to, again, assuming a complete capitulation by the Ukrainians, which he could force them into. But look, Trump doesn't have a philosophy. I mean, this is the point, right? Trump is the ultimate pragmatist. He doesn't think long-term. Long-term doesn't matter. There's no principles involved. He just wings it. And I think he would try to cut a deal with Putin and Zelensky. He'd wing it. And that might be successful. Yeah, if success means no war, but if success means, or if defeat means a Putin victory, then he would hand Putin a victory. All in the name of sparing the lives of those Ukrainian kids. How many times did he tell you about that? About the lives of Ukrainian kids. All right. Paul, who's the best U.S. politician? I don't know. They're all pretty miserable. I don't have a name for good U.S. politician right now. All right. Video coming through okay? Must be just... All right, let's see. We'll talk about that in a minute. Talk about that. Gail says, suppose a voter turnout is extremely low. I expect it to be low. Much lower than 2020. Much lower than 2020. Frank says, how do Trump tax cuts add trillions to the debt? Well, there's less revenue that comes into the government. So you get less revenue, and spending under Trump increases. With less revenue, that increases debt. But I haven't looked at the numbers. I don't know if that's true, that there was less revenue. But that would be the logic of accusing him of increasing debt. The more you cut taxes, the assumption is, the less revenue there is, less money comes in, and therefore, if you don't cut spending at the same time, the bigger the debt becomes. Whether that's true or not depends on the particular nature of the taxes being cut. Bash Bannigan, could Biden have declined participation in the debate? It was Biden's idea. Biden pushed for the debate, and he pushed for the debate in June, which is very, very, very early in the schedule for a debate. So I don't know what the Democrats were thinking, unless they wanted the world to see how bad Biden was doing to give them an excuse to pull him off, to pulling him off. Yeah, I mean, Biden is now vowing that he will do better in the second debate against Trump. So he does not look like he's dropping out. The Biden campaign is emphatic. He will not drop out. Yeah, I mean, the reality is I don't think that Democrats have the balls to kick him out. I don't think the odds are 40% that he leaves. I think they're lower than that, and I think he loses in a landslide. You know, and pretty scary stuff. Andrew, the exchange they had over blacks was racial and paternalistic. Yes, it was. It was pretty disgusting. What do you think is a good way to approach a question about how to improve black people's situation? Well, I think if it's a question of whether you want to be completely honest about it. And I think what you basically need to do is broaden it to how do you improve the situation of poor people in America. You got to get away from talking about blacks as a separate group, and then talk about the fact that they need to take more responsibility over their own lives, and the government needs to be giving them fewer handouts, and at the same time creating an economy in which there are plenty of jobs for them to be able to apply to. So you need to shift the responsibility from government onto them as individuals, while acknowledging that to the extent that government is hampering the ability of entrepreneurs and businesses to create jobs and creating a thriving economy, they make it harder for poor people to rise up by their own bootstraps. But you have to shift it away from, I gave 5 handouts, you gave 6. My handouts were better than your handouts, and all of that stuff. Yeah. So I think you have to broaden it again to poor people in general. Christian, Trump will tell Putin he will give even more weapons to Ukraine if Putin doesn't make peace with Zelensky, and Putin will fear the threat. That's what Gorka promised he will do. What do you think? I think Trump suggested that. I've seen him say that. Maybe, but I don't think that is going to drive Putin out. I mean, how much more weapons? Is Trump going to do 120? I think Putin would call his bluff. If Trump did that, I think Putin would call his bluff. And then what? He's going to go back to the people electing him and saying, oh, no, 60 billion was not enough to give Ukraine. We're going to give them 120 billion. As he go and say, oh, no, because of Putin's behavior, we're going to expand NATO as of today into Ukraine. I'm sending American troops. I mean, what's he going to do? Putin knows it's a bluff, and he'll call him on it. So Trump has no special expertise in negotiating with foreign leaders. Did he get Xi to behave? No. Did he get the brutal dictator of North Korea? Is he still around? Yeah. Did he behave? No. He has no, other than to appease them. That is, Trump's method of getting foreign dictators to do what, to behave, is to give them what they want. He gave Erdogan in Turkey what he wanted. He gave the North Korean brutal dictator what he wanted, which was, legitimization. He didn't really do anything to Xi. And, I mean, Biden's been tougher on Xi than Trump ever was. And he didn't do anything with Putin. He gave Putin what he wanted. He actually told us all that he believes Putin more than he does the CIA. Now, I'm not saying you should believe the CIA, but to believe Putin more than the CIA, that's a little bit of a stretch. A little bit. George says, is Congress afraid of enacting the 25th Amendment because of Kamala? No, I don't think that's it. I think that Congress I don't think that there are enough votes to, I don't think the Democrats are in a position to acknowledge how bad things are. I don't think that the Democrats are willing to do that. I don't think the Democrats are open to actually engaging in that issue. So I think it's more their cowardice, their fear. I don't think it has less to do with Kamala and more their fear of what the voters will think, of admitting it to themselves. And then Biden will fight them, and Biden is very powerful within the Democratic Party. Now maybe today is different than yesterday. Maybe this morning they have more courage to do it, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. All right, I know I have some other questions in the super chat. We'll get to them in a little bit. Yeah. I mean, people ask me questions on the chat as if I've never answered them. I've gone to great length to answer, some of the gotcha questions that you ask me on the chat. All right, let's see. Where are we? So I think that's it for the debate. I think we've talked enough about the debate. All right. You guys are just... Oh, God. What? I don't know what you do. I don't know. Let's see. Where are we? All right, quick reminders before we go back to, I want to talk about Supreme Court rulings. There's a series of them that, 3 Supreme Court rulings today, and then we've got a bunch coming on Monday. But let's see. Before I did that, I want to remind you all that this show is a listener-supported show. You want to ask me a question? You want me to comment on something? Put it in the super chat. I answer every super chat question. I read every super chat out loud. You wanna get me? You wanna get me? Show how inconsistent I am? Then put it up on the super chat. Let's go. I challenge you to do that. Cheap shots in the chat are just silly. And have very little reach because 90+% of the people who listen to the show listen to it after the fact and don't read the chats. So I refuse to debate on Coulter on immigration. I would fly anywhere, almost any time to debate Ann Coulter on immigration, and I would whip her. She is such a liar on immigration. That would be easy. God, yes, I would debate Ann Coulter anytime, any place. Arrange it, schedule it, invite me. I will do it. You guys are such fools. All right. Lucinda says, can't listen to the show right now because I'm calling my girlfriend, but here's $20. Thank you, Lucinda. Really appreciate the $20. I need more $20 not from Lucinda, but from you guys, because we need to make our goal. We did make our goal for the first hour. We need to make our goal for the second hour. So don't forget to do that and jump in here. Oh my God, Scott just got a membership. Apollo Zeus, you screwed up. You messed up. All right, there you go. All right, YouTube has no discretion. All right, some good news. We got good news for a change. We got good news for a change. And I can always block Scott from the member shows. I got good news for a change, and that is the Supreme Court ruled today. This is something I've been talking about for months now, that this was coming down the pipe, that this was probably what the Supreme Court would rule. Really, we've been talking about this since Gorsuch was elected, since Gorsuch was chosen for the court, because this is Gorsuch's thing. This is his issue. This was his issue as a judge. It's his issue as an intellectual. Curbing the power of the regulatory state, of the administrative state, has been high on the agenda of Neil Gorsuch. And he has got his big opportunity, not just on a case here, case there, on a small scale, but on a big scale. The United States Supreme Court today overturned the 1984 Chevron precedent. Now, the Chevron precedent was a ruling that I think was authored by Justice Scalia, so it came from a conservative judge. And this is what it says. Now, it's not as good as maybe some people are making it out to be, but it's as good as it gets these days. So what Chevron basically said was, when the law is ambiguous, and therefore, and a regulator applies this law in a particular way and is being sued because the plaintiff is claiming that it is a misapplication of the law, but the law is vague, that this is not what Congress intended in terms of applying the law, then Chevron basically says you've got to give precedence to the expertise of the regulatory agency. The courts are not the place to resolve what Congress meant. Congress has assigned, in a sense, that responsibility to the executive branch, to the regulatory agencies. And therefore, the courts should let the regulatory agencies, for the most part, now if it's egregious, if it's completely opposite of the law, or anything like that, then of course the court should intervene. But if it's ambiguous, then they should err on the side of going with the regulatory agency. Now, notice this was a very famously authored by the most conservative judge. It was Scalia who wrote this, and therefore it was unthinkable to challenge this because the conservatives went along with Scalia. First, Scalia was the guy who thought that individual rights were nonsense on stilts. Anyway, this has been the precedent for 40 years. And as a consequence, regulatory agencies have become more powerful. They get to interpret the law. They get to decide. They have a lot more power. They have hired a lot of new people to bolster their expertise so they could apply these laws. And here you're talking about anything from the SEC to the FDA to the what do you call it? The environmental, the EPA, which is a big one, the EPA, and on and on and on and on. And Gorsuch has written a lot about the fact that he believes, he questions the whole constitutionality of the regulatory regime that we have under, but that's a precedent I don't think he's willing to overturn. I don't think he's willing to write that it's unconstitutional. But he clearly has thought for a long time that Chevron gave the executive branch powers that really belong to Congress and the judiciary. What has happened since Chevron is Congress is writing laws that are vague on purpose so that they don't have to do the work to fill in the gaps, and so that they don't piss off any constituencies. So they write laws that are purposefully vague with the assumption that then the regulatory agencies will fill in the blank, and that's okay, and the courts have said okay. So Congress has become worse at doing its job, because it's delegated that job, the job of actually the content of the bills, to the regulatory agency. One of the great examples of this was Dodd-Frank, a vast, complex, massively statist regulatory bill to regulate the financial industry that was empty to a large extent of content and allowed the regulatory agency to fill in the blanks. Now, so that's one effect that it's had. It basically has made Congress a lot less effective, a lot more lazy, and a lot less diligent about what they do. But it has also basically relieved the judiciary from a key responsibility the judiciary has. And that is the responsibility of the judiciary to evaluate whether the executive branch is living up to the law. Because now the judiciary is saying, well, it's Chevron, the regulatory agency can do what they want, which is not the intent of Chevron. But that's the inclination it's going to support. Anyway, yesterday, the court ruled that no, the responsibility for legislation lies with Congress. The responsibility for spelling out what a bill means, how it should be applied, lies with Congress. And if there are ambiguities, the responsibility of resolving those ambiguities lie with the courts, not with the regulatory agencies. Now, this is huge. This is going to change the way bills are written, laws are written, in a way that makes them clearer. It's going to take away the arbitrary power that the regulatory agencies had for filling in the blanks, unelected officials, really functioning outside the Constitution. Basically, again, it holds the fire to the feet of Congress. You have to write real bills. You have to fill in the blanks, actually provide content, actually explain what you mean. And it also frees up the courts to bring in expert witnesses to do the real work that is necessary to see if a regulatory agency violated the intent of the law. Now, this is hugely important, and this is a really good step. It doesn't do what, one day maybe some court will do, which is invalidate the whole concept of regulatory agencies. It doesn't state a individual rights constitutional-based standard for what laws are acceptable and what are not, what is acceptable to regulate and what is not. So it's not a radical change. It returns things to the way they were in 1983, not exactly a time of robust economic freedom and liberty in the United States. But it is a slight improvement. It is an improvement in the right direction. And now it frees up the courts to get more involved in a lot of the regulatory policy and hopefully scrap a lot of it. We already saw that with the EPA a few months ago. And I think we'll see a lot more of the courts just throwing out bad, all regulation are bad, but particularly egregious regulations. It's a small crack, very small. Because, again, there's some principle behind here, which is the separation of powers. But that principle is not really thought through all the way to the end. I'm still happy. This is a good decision. I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's a good decision legally, so I don't know what our legal experts would say, but so far so good. Yay for getting rid of Chevron and actually requiring Congress to do its job and the courts to do their job. Let's see if I've missed anything with regard to this. The point made in the ruling was that agencies may have expertise in technical matters, but don't have any comparative advantage in interpreting statutory text. Indeed, that is explicitly the job of the courts. So they've overturned a precedent. That's another thing that makes this case unique. Its precedents are rarely overturned, and here is a overturning of a precedent, and that is good. All right. Here's Ilya Shapiro summary of the consequence of Chevron. Experience has shown that Congress loves avoiding accountability, and agencies love pursuing their own interests. In short, Chevron is dead. Long live judicial review. Yep, absolutely. All right. Okay, so a few other Supreme Court cases, and then maybe we'll call it a night. We'll call it a day. I will remind you, we're way behind on Super Chat. So please consider, like Peter just did, he did a sticker for $10. You too can do stickers, $5, $10, $2. We've got almost 200 people watching live. Please, if you just did a little bit of a sticker, a small sticker, $1, $2, $3. I know a lot of you there. If you're not subscribers, please subscribe. Please subscribe, press the subscribe button. Like the show before you leave. We want to have, the more likes there are, the more the algorithm treats the show well, the more it becomes prominent in the algorithm. And of course, if you want to support the show, please consider doing a super chat or doing a sticker to support the show. Thank you, Peter, for becoming a member. Thank you, Lucinda, for the 5 gifted memberships. Thank you, Paula Zeus, for the gifted membership, although it went to Scott's. I'm not sure I should thank you. I think that's all I can go backwards on. So yes, if you value the show, if you think what we do here as adds to your life in any kind of way, please consider supporting the show. Again, if you're live, that's through stickers and that's through Super Chat. If you're not live, please consider, if you value anything about, if you value my analysis, if you value what is done on the show, please consider becoming a monthly contributor on Patreon. Just put Yaron Brook Show, or on yaronbrookshow.com/membership. Tomorrow is Ask Me Anything, 2 p.m. East Coast time. All right, let's see. Another SCOTUS ruling, another Supreme Court ruling today. That's also a good ruling, I think. The Supreme Court sided with this Oregon city that wanted to clear out a homeless tent, and was prevented from doing so by lower courts that claimed that clearing out the tent city was cruel and unusual punishment. So the court ruled 6-3. By the way, the ruling on Chevron was 6-3. All 6 conservative justices. This one was also 6-3. All 6 conservative justices voted here too. They ruled for the city. In other words, they ruled that cities have wide discretion in terms of how to deal with the homeless problem, that the homeless did not have a right to pitch tents any way they wanted to, that this was governable by local ordinances and local authorities, and that this was not a violation, that is, dismantling these tent cities was not a violation of the Constitution. This, I think, Gavin Newsom in California supported the Oregon city, is very happy, at least claimed to be happy for this decision. He intends now to use this ruling to get a lot tougher on the homeless in California. We'll see if that actually happens, but that's what he said he would do. Move their tent cities to where I guess the state would like them to be rather than where they happen to pitch them. So all of that is now possible because of this Supreme Court ruling. This is a good ruling. It denies the homelessness because they're miserable, because they don't have anything, because of altruism. It doesn't just say, okay, because of altruism, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Nobody can do anything. It respects the ability to get rid of this blight on neighborhoods and communities all over the United States. Was this a 6-3? This was also a 6-3 decision. Another 6-3 decision today was regarding the January 6th case. A number of the people prosecuted after January 6th were prosecuted under a law that basically prohibited obstruction of proceeding with law enforcement activities, and it really is a law that was written after Enron, and the purpose of the law was to prevent people from like shredding documents that law enforcement was seeking in order to prosecute them. So it's obstructing the investigation of law enforcement into you, which the law was written to stop, right? It was weirdly applied on January 6th in obstructing an official proceeding, which relates to the certification of Joe Biden as president. But the court has decided, the court has ruled, and I don't have an opinion here, that obstructing an official proceeding, what was meant when this law was passed, was not something like January 6th, but it was actually, again, more like the Enron case, and therefore they voted against it. A lot of the people who prosecuted after January 6th were prosecuted under this law. It's probably a mistake. There's probably many other laws they could have been prosecuted under. I'm not sure what exactly the Attorney General will do, the Justice Department will do about this, because this is certainly part of the conviction. Let's see. There are 52 cases in which a defendant was convicted and sentenced on charges where the obstruction count was the sole felony. And of those, 27 are currently incarcerated, according to the Justice Department. Those 27 are probably going to have to be released based on this ruling. So I don't think it exonerates anybody for January 6th. But it really is a condemnation of the Justice Department for using this particular law, a law written for Enron, for this particular case. There have to be better laws. There have to be laws against breaking into the House of Representatives. There have to be laws against obstructing a procedure of the House of Representatives. It strikes me weird that you would have to go to this law in order to prosecute the January 6th rioters. So anyway, it was an interesting split. You got 5 conservatives and 1 liberal voting to get rid of these prosecutions. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is considered very liberal, voted with the conservative justices, which is unusual. I guess not that unusual for this court. This court has seen a lot of splits, a lot of different combinations. And then Connie Barrett actually voted with the 2 liberals. Right? Actually voted with the 2 liberals. So this is, again, an interesting combination. Amy Connie Barrett seems to be a pretty interesting judge, so it's going to be interesting to follow her because she keeps flipping between the left and the right in interesting ways. So it'll be interesting to follow her and see what is her judicial philosophy, if there is any. What is she seeking? What is really involved here? What is happening? Right. Anyway, that is the other Supreme Court case. Let's see, and I think we'll call it on the news right there. I'll take more Super Chat questions. I'll remind everybody that you can ask more Super Chat questions. Then I might make a few comments, not too many, about how do we move, where do we go from here as a political entity? What happens at this point? And how do we get to a better place than this? And so we'll go from there. But please use the Super Chat. We're about $90. $90? No, that's not right. we're about $170 short of our goal for the second hour. So looking for anybody who can do $100 or $50 or get us to where we need to go. I'm looking for some of my whales to show up. Of the 193 people watching right now, is anybody willing to put $100 or $200 to support the show and get us over the target? Or is there anybody in 193 people watching the show right now willing to do a sticker for $2, $3, $4 that will just, in cumulative, help us get over the hump? All we need is $2 from each one of you, and we basically made our target for the 3 hours. So $2 from everybody online right now. Value for value, guys. You're getting a value by listening, I assume, some value, even if it's just to piss you off, and you're enjoying that. Show the value that you receive by making a small contribution. All right. Arum says, will you address my email regarding Jeff Jesus, and Beth Jesus? Beth Jeff. Anyway, can't pronounce that name. And Tokyo, yes, I will. I need to get to it. I'm way behind. I apologize. I'm just swamped. I have been swamped. I'm trying to catch up after Ocon, and I've got it listed on my emails that need to be responded to, and I will. Jacob, Chevron is dead. Long live the Constitution, even though they are all philosophically bad. Who is your favorite Supreme Court justice? I mean, that's a tough one. I'd say probably Gorsuch, just because when he's good, he's good. But he's also terrible, right? He's also terrible on, he was really, really terrible on, on abortion, and he's terrible on some other issues. So, and some of these rulings have been bad. I don't like any of them. They're all terrible, and they're all philosophically corrupt. But, he's got at least this agenda of dismantling the regulatory state, and I'm looking forward to seeing him do that. If he can achieve that, that'll take us in a positive direction in terms of economic liberty, at least to some extent. Esoteric Dichoto, hey, Yaron, my dad was concerned about Snyder versus United States regarding gratuities and public officials. Have you given thought on this? Yeah, I mean, I think we have to understand this ruling as narrow, right? I think what the Supreme Court is saying, it's basically saying, look, the federal law that applies to corruption at the state level does not exclude gratuities and gifts that happen after the fact, after whatever deal, after whatever decision was made. Now, that might be a flaw, but the decision is that that's not in the law. And it's not that the justice is saying gifts and gratuities after the fact to public officials are okay. They're saying the law doesn't cover that. You don't like it, pass a law. And they're right. They shouldn't expand law beyond what it actually means. Now, most states have a prohibition on that at the state level. So I think in most states, that's not an issue because there's already a prohibition on it. I think the federal law was supposed to cover gaps in corruption where state law hadn't filled it in. Obviously, federal law is not comprehensive enough. It needs to be broader to cover the kind of gratuities and gifts. So I think your dad is right to be concerned, but his concern should not be vis-a-vis the court, which I think just ruled on the basis of the law. I think his concern should be focused on the legislature, sloppy law writing. Surprise, surprise. Sloppy law writing. All right. Kika, oh, by the way, thank you, Chris, for the sticker. A few of you of the 184 listening right now actually responded. Thank you, Arum. Thank you, David. So would love to see some new names, some first-time super chatters, or come in. This is your opportunity. Come on over. Were libertarians worse after 9/11 or October 7th? I think in many respects, October 7th is more revealing because they don't really have any skin in the game. So, yeah, America gives some money to Israel, but it's not a huge amount, not as compared to other stuff that the American government does. So they don't have any skin in the game. And in spite of not having any skin in the game, they actively supported the homicidal maniacs, the crazies, Hamas, the rapists, the I don't know, this video out now. You know, the number of babies Hamas killed that day. You know, just astounding. Ripping a pregnant woman's stomach open. Just disgusting stuff. And yeah, libertarians, yeah, it's Israel's fault. But look, you could argue the opposite. You could argue their own country was attacked, and they blamed the victim. And they didn't want the U.S. government to respond at all. In the contrary, they wanted the U.S. government to acknowledge its own responsibility for what happened and put tail between the legs and come home. They supported nutty conspiracy theories. So it could go either way. I don't know. I mean, they're both horrific and horrible. It really could go either way in terms of which one was worse. It's enough to say really, really, really bad, right? Apollo Zeus wants to know the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, bar your wife. Oh, I don't know, just beautiful face, beautiful figure. I mean, what do you mean? There are a lot of beautiful women out there, particularly, actresses and so on. So hard to pin it down to one most beautiful. Do you mean in person? Do you mean? Yeah, I mean, I've seen beautiful people all over the world in person, right? As I've traveled, there are beautiful, beautiful women everywhere you go. I mean, certain countries, are pretty spectacular in terms of beauty, particularly the kind of beauty I like. Colombia, Brazil, but certain parts of Europe, Asia, beautiful women in Asia. So yeah, there are a lot Italian. There are a lot of beautiful women in the world. There's no shortage of beautiful women in the world, but it's not uniformly distributed across the globe. I agree with Abutin. Oh, Troy just did 50 memberships. Like now you're all members, right? Even Friend Harper now is a member. Weren't you a member before? Oh, he said define beautiful. I thought you were in the list of. I thought you were a member. God, look at all these people who are members now. Almost everybody who was not a member before. Troy, thank you. Really, really appreciate that. That is amazing. So we just did 50 memberships. I think we can count this towards our total for the day. I think we pretty much made our total. All right, so I want to say something about kind of where we go from here. Maybe a little spiel for 10 minutes about this. Look, I mean, the state of American politics is abysmal. And those of you who are happy because Biden completely self-destructed yesterday, there's something wrong with you. Because the fact is that all that is it reinforces and commits us to a presidency of Donald Trump. And you might say he's better than Biden, but to be happy about that is something's off, something's wrong. We have a dysfunctional political system, but really what we have is a dysfunctional culture. We have a culture that has become unmoored from its founding principles. A culture and a politics that have become completely separate, completely contradictory to the very essence, the very nature, the very characteristics of this country, what made this country great. We have a culture that's un-American. And we have politicians who are un-American. We have a political system. The system itself is still somehow holding together. But we have the participants in the American system who are un-American. Oh, and then Troy also did 500 Australian dollars. Thank you, Troy. Really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll get to meet Troy in Brisbane. We'll see. We'll see if I'm going to Brisbane. I'm not yet sure. So while we still call this the United States of America, this country is lost. It is lost. It is drifting. It has a vague recollection of the founders, a vague recollection of a constitution and a Declaration of Independence. I mean, the Supreme Court seems to have some respect for the separation of powers, but not much more than that. Certainly not for the idea of individual rights. And the idea of individual rights is what makes America America. The idea of individualism, of individual self-reliance, of the individual setting his course in life and living free to live the kind of course that he sets, live the kind of life that he determines for himself. That is what makes America. The force, the coercion, the manipulation at every step by the federal government, by state governments, by local governments, at every step from abortion to trade is un-American. The vilification of immigrants to this country is un-American. People accuse me of, oh my God, open borders. America had open borders for the first 100 years and really had open borders for the first 150 years of its existence. Unless you were Chinese, and there you were restricted from 1896, I think it was. We had basically open borders until 1921, or 24, 21 and then 24, where there were restrictions. Was that such a horrible period in American history? Well, no. All of these things are just un-American. You could argue, look, there's a welfare state. We should really argue to get rid of the welfare state so that we don't have to be encumbered with paying welfare to immigrants. Fine, get that. Or, you know, the immigrants really are a burden on government education, so let's fight to get rid of government education. Fine. But just the ugliness of the vilification of immigrants today in America is a fundamental anti-American sign. And people who do it are anti-American. They reject the very essence of America. So what do you do? What do you do today? Well, there is only one thing we can do. And that is, in a sense, to start over with American ideals. It's not to run around celebrating that Trump is going to be president. That should be beneath the people who support in any way this show. It should be beneath any American with a capital A. We shouldn't be celebrating the demise of Joe Biden, the rise of Trump. We shouldn't be, in any of those cases. We might say, okay, it's bought us a little bit more time. Maybe. I don't think even that is true. What we need to do, realizing the dire strait that America is in, is go out there and redouble our efforts to change this culture. Redouble our efforts to return America to its principles, to make America principled again, to make Americans identify, focus on, realize the importance of individual rights again. Our job is not to choose between two horrible, evil, disgusting, awful candidates. It's not your job. And to answer Andy's question, it's absolutely legitimate to abstain. Absolutely legitimate to say I can't vote for either one of these bastards. Ayn Rand did it on several occasions, at least 2 occasions. She did it in the 50s because she couldn't vote for Eisenhower, and she did it in 1980 because she couldn't vote for Reagan. Imagine, couldn't vote for Reagan. How principled Ayn Rand was. Compare her to people like Scott. So absolutely it is legitimate to abstain. How many seconds do you think it'll take Scott to say, but Peikoff supports Trump? I mean, I give it like 30 seconds. He's probably already typed it. Maybe he's now deleting it. So forget about politics. Forget about politics. Yeah. Anyway. What we need to do is advocate for the right ideas. We need to wake up. Whatever is left of the American sense of life and the American spirit, if anything is left of it. There is no alternative, no shortcut, no other way other than to start educating the American people about what America is, what America stands for, what this country is about, what the principle of individual rights is and what it requires. And that doesn't mean give me a laissez-faire capitalist economy, laissez-faire capitalist government tomorrow or else. No, it means let's start educating people about the steps, the small steps, including Chevron, that doing away with Chevron, that are necessary to move us towards greater freedom and greater liberty, step by step. It's not going to happen in a day. It can't happen in a day. Let's talk about what that looks like. What kind of laws can be repealed? What kind of regulatory agencies can be abolished? How do we privatize education? How do we get rid of government involvement in education? We need to promote a politics of freedom, a politics of liberty. Rather than endorse or celebrate or engage in the politics of today, right now, which are all beneath contempt. So, yeah, don't disengage from what's going on in our political world. On the contrary, engage more. But engage not at the level of, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm this, I'm that. Don't engage at the level of a tribalist, which is what some people here do. Engage at the level of a critic. Engage at the level of somebody who has better ideas, who knows how the world could and should be. Engage at the level of somebody who can go out there and at least talk about what America is really about. Talk about liberty and freedom and individual rights and limited government and what freedom means and its value and why it's important. I mean, if you can and want, talk about reason, talk about rationality, absolutely. Talk about egoism, absolutely. But even if it's just at the political level, which is easier for most of us, talk about the value of America, the value of this country, not as a beautiful scenery and as respect for God, but as the country that for the first time in history recognized that government must be limited to the protection of individual rights, limited by the principle of individual rights, limited in its function, limited in its abilities. Right. Educate, educate, educate. And you educate every time you speak up. Every time you make an unpopular declaration of principle, you educate. Anytime you object to the status quo and provide principled argument in opposition to it, you're educating. Anytime you write, anytime you speak, anytime you speak in a principled way, based on the ideas of individual rights, based on the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. You educate people out there. You make the world a slightly better place. You give us hope for a better political future than we seemingly have today. And when you stay quiet, or when you, like some, cheer and rally for clearly a horrible candidate, because he's against the other tribe, you diminish your ability to educate. You diminish your ability to change anything. You become one of the mob, one of the tribe, and you're useless, completely useless for having any impact on the world. Because if we're going to come out of this on the other side in better shape, it is only if people speak up. It is only if people like you work to educate the American public. I mean, think about the Federalist paper. Think about the debates, the discussions, the intellectuality of it, the founders, how much work they put up, and what risks they took to do it, to fight for this country, to create this country, to make this country what it is. We're at an existential point in this country where the country is going to hell. You got to be inspired by them to at least stand up and speak. Nobody's asking you to take a gun and go fight. But stand up and speak. Stand up and object. Say, you know, I'm voting for Trump, but he's horrible. He's terrible. He's despicable. This is what I hope the Republican Party will do in the future. Can't say anything about that. I mean, think you're wrong, but it doesn't matter. That's okay. But to only attack one side, to not recognize any faults, to not speak on principle, to not talk about principles, to not discuss principles, is to abandon your responsibility for your own future. It's to not to be selfish. It's not to be egoistic, and it's not to be rational. So I don't care who you vote for. I really don't at this point, because Trump has won, so it doesn't really matter. What I care about is what you say. That's what matters. It's what arguments you make. It's what positions you take. It's what principles you advocate for. The actual pulling the lever makes zero difference. Your vote won't matter anyway. It's not, no election is won by one vote. So it's time to continue to speak, to talk, to educate, to stand on principle, to argue, and to criticize. Be a critic. Criticize everybody whenever they're wrong. Doesn't matter who they are. Criticize them when they're wrong. And in politics today, everybody is wrong. So you've got to criticize everybody. They'll almost never say anything that is right or true or based on the right ideas. So what do we need today? We need a revolution. And you guys are not ready for an armed revolution. You have no idea what that takes and what that means. And you're not capable of it. And there are not enough of you. So the kind of revolution we need is the kind of revolution we've needed for a long time. It's an intellectual revolution. But it's time to think of yourself as revolutionaries, radicals, not status quo, establishment, tribalists. Radicals for liberty, radicals for individualism, radicals for reason, radicals. Let's build a movement of radicals who do not accept compromise, who speak out no matter what, who are not going to be silenced, who criticize everybody who deserves to be criticized, and who stand for the truth, who stand for the individual, who stand for freedom and liberty. That's what we need. That's where we need to go. And I think ultimately we'll win, but it's going to require that. Michael says, happy to say today was my last day in my engineering job, so I can pursue full-time study in the humanities. Thanks for the inspiration over the years. Here's to freedom. Thank you, Michael. I hope you're taking classes at the Ayn Rand University as part of this study in the humanities. And I'm eager to have you join the battle because, there is nothing more important right now than the intellectual battle. We need as many officers and generals fighting that battle as we can find. All right. Thank you, guys. I will see you tomorrow, AMA. Ask me anything, 2 o'clock. Don't forget to like the show before you leave, if you liked it. I don't expect anybody to like it if they didn't like it. And I will see you tomorrow. I'll probably also do a show on Sunday. So stay tuned for that. Probably 3 o'clock on Sunday. We'll do a show then. I'll figure out a topic for that one. I see some people obsessed with one question in biology, and it's the only thing that matters to them in life. I feel sorry for you, Abuin. All right. See you tomorrow. Have a great weekend in spite of the shitty condition of the world. And, see you tomorrow. Bye.